At the will reading, I watched my father snatch a check for $99 million straight out of my hands and set it on fire. My mother's voice cut through the silence like a knife. "This is what you get for cutting us off." Flames swallowed the paper, smoke curling into the air as if erasing me with it. Everyone waited for me to scream, to fight, to crumble. But I didn't. I didn't even blink. I just smiled. Because what they burned wasn't real. My name is Chloe Carter, the granddaughter of a billionaire. And on that day, my parents thought they'd destroyed my future. What they didn't know was that my grandfather had prepared me for this moment, prepared me to face the family that betrayed me, to survive the fire, and to rise from the ashes with more than money, with the truth. The marble lobby of Harper and Associates gleamed so brightly it almost hurt to look at. My heels clicked against the floor as I stepped inside, a sound I hadn't heard in years. It felt like armor, each tap reminding me that I wasn't here to beg. I was here to witness. The receptionist barely looked at me, before pointing to the glass doors. Inside, the conference room was already full. My mother, Sarah, sat stiff with her pearls twisted around her fingers, her lips pressed so tightly together I wondered if they'd crack. My father, Robert, leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, a scowl etched into his face like it had been waiting for me all morning. And Jacob, my older brother, lounged with his legs crossed, sunglasses pushed back on his head, like this was just another Sunday brunch. Not one of them acknowledged me. "Miss Carter," said William Harper, the family lawyer, standing at the head of the long mahogany table. His voice was calm, professional, but his eyes carried weight. "Thank you for joining us. We're here today to fulfill the last wishes of your grandfather, Henry Carter." I took the last seat, as always, quiet and deliberate. The scent of lemon polish and old leather clung to the air. My hands rested in my lap, steady, even though my pulse thudded in my throat. Mr. Harper cleared his throat and began. "To Jacob Carter," he read, unfolding a crisp page. "Your grandfather leaves the Jackson Hole cabin and his 1959 Gibson guitar." Jacob's smirk faltered for just a moment. "That's it?" he muttered. Mr. Harper didn't respond. He continued smoothly. "To Robert and Sarah Carter, his son and daughter-in-law, he leaves the heirloom grandfather clock, his vinyl collection, and a charitable donation of $10,000 made in your names." The silence cracked. My mother gasped, choking on disbelief. "Excuse me? That's absurd." My father barked out a bitter laugh. "A joke. This has to be a joke." I stared at the polished table, letting their outrage wash over me like static. Then Mr. Harper's eyes met mine. "And to Chloe Carter," he said slowly, his tone deliberate. "He leaves his entire financial estate totaling $99 million. The room went silent. For one suspended heartbeat, I swore I could hear the hum of the overhead lights. "What?" my father snapped, lurching forward. "You heard me," Mr. Harper said firmly. "This was notarized 3 months ago. The decision was deliberate." And my mother's face twisted, veins standing out at her temples. "She hasn't spoken to us in years. She abandoned this family. She doesn't get to walk back in here like some martyr and collect a fortune." I lifted my chin, finally speaking. "I didn't walk back in. I was invited." Jacob scoffed, leaning back in his chair. "Grandpa just felt sorry for you, Chloe. Poor little Chloe who couldn't keep up." But then Harper slid a sealed brown envelope across the table toward me. The wax stamp still bore the crest my grandfather had carved with his own hands. "For you," he said quietly. His last words were clear. She stayed silent, and she stayed strong. She was never forgotten. I reached out, my fingers brushing the seal just as my father's hand shot across the table. My father's fingers clamped around the envelope before mine could even close. His grip was iron, veins bulging, as if the paper itself had personally betrayed him. "Robert," Mr. Harper warned, voice sharp, "that belongs to Chloe." But my father was already tearing it open, his movements savage, like a predator gutting prey. The check slid free, a crisp rectangle of ink and promise. His face twisted as he held it up, shaking it in the air like evidence of a crime. $99 million? His voice cracked, too loud for the room. "This is insanity. This girl doesn't deserve a cent." I stayed still, my nails digging crescents into my palms. My mother lunged forward next, snatching the folded letter that had been tucked inside. She unfolded it with shaking hands, eyes scanning the words. Her lip curled. For the one who stayed silent, and stayed strong. She spat the words like venom. Then she ripped the letter clean in half. Silent? Strong? She was ungrateful. Always ungrateful. "Give that back," I said, my voice low, even. But my mother only laughed, bitter and sharp. "Oh, listen to her. Calm, collected, like she's above us." She tore the letter again, then again, until the pieces were nothing but confetti scattered across the table. Jacob leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, watching the chaos like it was dinner theater. "You've always loved playing the victim, Chloe. Guess it finally paid off." I turned my eyes on him, steady, unblinking. "Guess you'll have to live with scraps of a guitar while I walk out with the future." His smirk faltered. "Enough!" my father roared, slamming the check down onto the table. His hand dove into the inside pocket of his jacket, pulling out a silver lighter. The click echoed like a gunshot. "Dad!" I snapped, rising to my feet. "You don't get to buy your way back into this family?" he shouted, flicking the wheel. The flame hissed alive, hungry. "You left us, Chloe. You left us long before your grandfather died." "Robert, don't you dare," Mr. Harper began, standing. But it was too late. My father pressed the flame to the edge of the check. The paper curled instantly, black veins racing across the surface as fire devoured ink and promises alike. My mother's lips curved into a cruel smile as ash flaked into the crystal ashtray. "This," she said, folding her arms, "is what happens when you betray your family." I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just watched the smoke trail upward, twisting like incense at a funeral. And then I smiled. Because what they were burning wasn't what they thought it was. The flame caught the edge of the check with a hiss so sharp it cut through the silence. My eyes locked on the paper as it curled in my father's grip, corners folding inward like petals burning off a flower. Smoke rose in delicate spirals, almost beautiful if it weren't consuming $99 million. "Stop!" Mr. Harper shouted, reaching across the table. But my father jerked his arm back like a madman, his knuckles white as he held the burning paper higher. "This money doesn't belong to her," he bellowed. "She walked away from this family, and now she thinks she can walk back in and take everything? Not while I'm alive." "Robert!" my mother cried, but not in protest. She was smiling, her voice thick with satisfaction. "Burn it all. Let her see what happens when you spit on your bloodline." Ash rained down into the glass tray, black flakes falling like dead snow. The smell was acrid, bitter, choking the air. I stood frozen, every nerve in my body screaming to lunge forward, to save the check, to prove that I belonged. But I didn't move, because I knew better. My hands curled at my sides. My pulse thundered in my ears, but my face stayed calm, almost serene. "You think fire erases truth?" I whispered. My father slammed the charred remains into the tray, his chest heaving. "Now we're even." His voice was hoarse, raw, full of a rage that had no place to go. My mother leaned back, folding her arms. "You'll never win against us, Chloe. Money can't rewrite the past. You abandoned us when your father was sick. You abandoned us when we needed you most." Jacob chuckled darkly. "She's not even fighting back. Look at her standing there like a statue. Did Grandpa teach you that too, Chloe? To play weak until you got your payday?" I finally lifted my eyes to him. "No," I said softly. "He taught me that silence can cut deeper than screaming." The room went quiet again. The kind of silence that feels alive, heavy with words no one dares to say. Inside, my chest burned hotter than the flame that had just eaten the check. Anger, betrayal. But under it all, something else. Triumph. Because what they had turned to ash wasn't real. What they destroyed was a decoy, a blank my grandfather had left behind for me to place in that envelope, knowing exactly what they would do. He knew they'd want to ruin something. He knew they couldn't resist the fire. And now they thought they'd won. I let them believe it. I let them smirk and sneer. Let them mistake my silence for defeat. But behind my calm smile, I was already holding the real legacy. And soon, they would learn that the fire they lit was only the beginning. The smoke still lingered in the air when Mr. Harper cleared his throat. His eyes flicked toward me, steady but searching, as if he already knew what my parents didn't. I gave the smallest nod. He said nothing, but his silence was its own kind of shield. My parents thought they had ended it, reduced my inheritance to ash, but I felt the weight of a different envelope in my coat pocket, the one my grandfather had pressed into my hands 2 months before he died. His grip had been frail, his voice quiet, but his eyes still burned with the fire of a man who had built an empire from nothing. "They'll try to destroy what they can't control," he had whispered, leaning close. "So I'll give them something to burn. Let them have their victory. What matters will already be safe." I'd laughed nervously back then, thinking it was just paranoia, but as I watched the last ember fade into cold ash, I finally understood. The letter he gave me had been sealed in wax, his family crest stamped deep into the surface. I had opened it the night before the will reading, my heart racing as if I were already trespassing into forbidden territory. "Chloe," the note began in his familiar looping script, "if you are reading this, then I am gone, and the family I once trusted is circling like wolves. The check you'll be given is not the real gift, it is bait. They will burn it, and they will think they've destroyed you. But the truth is already beyond their reach." I could still see his handwriting, shaky but deliberate. "The real legacy has been secured, wired to a trust in your name, protected by those I trust outside this family. When the fire rises, do not panic. Smile. That will be your victory." So I had smiled. Not out of courage, not out of defiance, but because the moment my parents lit that paper, I knew they had played right into his plan. I pressed a hand against my coat pocket, feeling the crinkle of the second envelope thicker, heavier. Inside was a key engraved with the word trillium. My grandfather had given it to me with no explanation other than, "One day, you'll need this word more than air." Now, it pulsed in my memory like a heartbeat. Jacob leaned forward, smirking at the ashes. "Well, Chloe? Cat got your tongue? Or are you just realizing you're not as special as you thought?" I turned to him, my smile steady. "No, Jacob. I'm realizing you're exactly as predictable as Grandpa said you were." Confusion flickered across his face, but I didn't elaborate. Let him stew. Because soon, very soon, the truth would burn brighter than any flame they could conjure. The next morning, the marble echoes of the law office were replaced by the hushed stillness of the Langford Private Bank. The building looked ordinary from the outside, red brick, iron gates, ivy, creeping up the walls, but inside, it was fortress-like. Thick carpets swallowed sound, and the air smelled faintly of cedar and ink. "Miss Carter," the clerk at the front desk said after scanning my ID. Her tone softened once she read the file. "You're here for box 12. Mr. Adams is expecting you." Mr. Adams, my grandfather's old confidant. He was waiting by the elevator, silver hair combed neatly, his posture as straight as it had been decades ago. "Chloe," he greeted me with a small nod, his voice measured. "Henry prepared this long before his passing. Follow me." We descended in silence, the elevator groaning as if it carried the weight of secrets. My palms dampened, not with fear, but with anticipation. Grandpa had trusted this man. That alone steadied me. The vault opened with a mechanical hiss, the cold air brushing against my face. The room stretched before me, lined with metal drawers, each marked with discrete numbers. Mr. Adams guided me to one. "Box 12, he said, placing a small brass key into my palm. The word trillium was etched faintly along its side. I swallowed hard. "He gave me this word months ago." Mr. Adams simply nodded. "Then, he trusted you to be ready." The lock turned smoothly. The drawer slid out with a heavy metallic sigh. Inside rested a fireproof envelope sealed in red wax, a small black velvet pouch, and a thick file bound with a crimson ribbon. My hands trembled as I reached for the envelope first. The wax bore the same carved crest, the Carter stallion, proud and fierce. I broke the seal carefully, unfolding a crisp sheet of paper. "Chloe," it read, "if you are standing in this vault, it means they burned the false gift as I knew they would. The check within this envelope is the real $199 million, signed and secured. But money is not the legacy. Look deeper." I pulled out the check. Its weight surprised me, thicker than normal, the ink bold, my grandfather's looping signature unmistakable. My breath hitched, but I forced my hands steady. Next, I opened the velvet pouch. A flash drive slid into my palm, smooth and cold. I didn't wait. Mr. Adams led me to a small private booth with a laptop waiting. My fingers shook as I connected the drive. The screen flickered, and then there he was. Grandpa, sitting in his old study, shelves of leather-bound books behind him, the dusty lamp I used to hide under as a child glowing faintly to the side. If you're watching this, Chloe, his voice filled the room, soft but unwavering, then I'm gone. And if I'm right, they've already shown you what they're capable of. But you are the one I trust. This legacy isn't about wealth. It's about power, control, and survival. And now, it's in your hands. I pressed my hand over my mouth, my chest tight with something that wasn't grief, wasn't relief, but a storm of both. For the first time since the fire, I felt the truth settling inside me. My grandfather hadn't just left me money. He had left me a weapon. 2 nights after the vault, I found Jacob waiting outside my apartment building. His black BMW idled at the curb, headlights cutting through the misty dusk. He leaned against the hood, arms crossed, posture relaxed, but his jaw tightened when he saw me. "Chloe," he called, voice smooth but strained. "We need to talk." I almost walked past him, but something in his tone, half command, half plea, made me stop. "Talk?" I echoed. "About what? The ashes you're still sweeping off Dad's shoes?" He flinched, just for a second, then smirked. "You've always had that sharp tongue. Grandpa probably loved that. But let's be real, this can't all be yours. 99 million? You'll drown in it. Split it with us. With me." I laughed, low and bitter. "So this isn't about family. It's about survival for you." Jacob's eyes hardened. "Don't pretend you don't need us. Money doesn't protect you. Dad's furious. Mom's talking about contesting the will. You can't fight them alone." I stepped closer, close enough to see the faint tremor in his hand as he ran it through his hair. "You really think I'm alone?" I whispered. His smirk faltered. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means Grandpa saw through you, all of you. He prepared me. He gave me more than money. He gave me proof." His face blanched, the swagger draining like water through a sieve. "Proof? Of what?" "That you'd betray me the first chance you got," I said evenly. "And here you are, right on schedule." Jacob's mask cracked then, desperation leaking through. "Chloe, listen. They pushed me into it. Dad said if I didn't back him, I'd be cut out completely. You know how he is." I cut him off with a glare. "You chose your side. Don't pretend you were powerless." You smiled while they burned it. For once, Jacob didn't have a comeback. His eyes darted, his mouth opened, then closed again. "Finally," he muttered. I didn't think he'd really give it all to you. And that's why he didn't give it to you," I shot back. The silence between us stretched tight, brittle. Cars hummed by, a dog barked down the block, but all I heard was the echo of Grandpa's voice in my memory. "Silence is the sharpest blade." I turned away, climbing the steps to the door. "Chloe," Jacob called after me, voice cracking now. "If you keep pushing them, they'll destroy you. They've done it before. You know they'll try again." I paused, my hand on the doorknob, then glanced back at him. My smile was thin, sharp as glass. "Let them try," I said. Then I closed the door behind me, leaving him in the mist with nothing but his fading bravado. The courthouse smelled of polished wood and old dust, the kind of place where truth either rose like fire or drowned in silence. I walked through the metal detector, my heels striking the marble floor in a rhythm steady enough to mask the storm inside me. Beside me, Sylvia Orton, my grandfather's chosen lawyer, strode with quiet confidence, her silver hair swept back like a battle flag. Inside the chamber, my parents sat together at one table. My father wore a navy blazer, wrinkled at the sleeves, as if he hadn't slept. My mother's pearls gleamed defiantly against her neck, her lips twisted into the faintest smirk. Jacob sat behind them, his eyes darting nervously, tapping his foot against the bench. They didn't look at me, but I could feel their hatred like heat radiating across the aisle. Judge Kinley entered, gavel striking once. "We are here today regarding the estate of Henry Carter. Disputed wills have been submitted. Let us proceed." My parents' lawyer, young and arrogant, rose first. "Your Honor, The most recent legitimate will clearly leaves all major assets to my clients. Any suggestion otherwise is forged and unfounded. I felt the corner of Sylvia's mouth twitch, a predator about to strike. She stood slowly, each motion deliberate. Your Honor, we submit into evidence a revised will executed under legal counsel, notarized, and signed by Henry Carter himself 5 months after the document they present. Gasps rippled across the courtroom. My father slammed his fist on the table. Lies, he roared. Order, Judge Kinley barked. But Sylvia wasn't done. She tapped a tablet, and the courtroom screen flickered to life. My grandfather's face appeared older, thinner, resting in a hospice bed, but his voice clear and steady. If you are watching this, he said, staring directly into the camera, it means they are doing what I feared. They pressured me into signing a will I did not want. I corrected it. My true heir is my granddaughter, Chloe Carter. No coercion, no doubt. This was my choice. The silence that followed was absolute, broken only by the sound of my mother's strangled gasp. Jacob's head dropped into his hands. Sylvia's voice cut through the tension. Additionally, Your Honor, we have correspondence between the respondents and Henry Carter, pressuring him to stick to the script or else. We also submit testimony from Mr. Adams of Langford Bank, who secured the trust according to Mr. Carter's private instructions. The judge leaned back, eyes narrowing at my parents. I've seen greed. I've seen cruelty. Rarely have I seen both so boldly displayed. Miss Carter is affirmed as the sole heir. The estate shall be transferred accordingly. My father lurched to his feet. This isn't over, he shouted. Sit down, Robert, the judge snapped. I'm also issuing a freeze on your assets pending investigation into elder coercion and document tampering. The gavel struck again, final and thunderous. Court is adjourned. I stood, spine straight, as my parents stared daggers through me. But for once, I didn't feel small under their gaze. For once, I was untouchable. The courthouse steps stretched out before me like the path to a new life. Reporters clustered near the entrance, microphones flashing in the sun, their voices rising in a frantic chorus. Chloe, do you have a statement? Chloe, what do you say to your parents' accusations? I paused, the weight of the gavel still echoing in my ears. The ink on the judgment not yet dry. My reflection in the glass doors had looked the same when I walked in, but now I carried something else. Power. Peace. I stepped up to the microphones. My voice was calm, even steady. They already said everything when they set fire to the only love that ever saw me. I have nothing else to add. The reporters shouted more questions, but I walked away, my heels striking sharp against the stone. Behind me, my parents stumbled from the courthouse. My father barked into his phone, already desperate, already defeated. My mother's pearls hung askew, her face pale with shock. Jacob trailed after them, silent, eyes fixed on the ground. For once, none of them looked victorious. They looked small. I reached the sidewalk and inhaled. The city buzzed as it always had, cars honking, strangers rushing past, but it felt different now, as if the world itself had shifted. In my bag, the real envelope rested legal documents, the trust papers, my grandfather's final video still saved on the flash drive. But the most valuable thing wasn't the money or the papers, it was his words. Silence is the sharpest blade. That silence had carried me through the fire. It had outlasted their rage. And now, it had delivered me here, to freedom. That night, I sat in my apartment, the city lights flickering against the window. I unwrapped the old scarf my grandfather had given me when I was 10, still faintly smelling of cedar. I placed the real check and the USB inside the safe at the back of my closet, locked it, then sat at my desk with a cup of tea that had finally gone cold. For years, I'd felt erased, pushed aside, silenced, forgotten. Tonight, the silence was mine. It was no longer empty. It was earned. I wasn't just the girl they'd tried to break. I was the woman who had risen from the ashes they lit with their own hands. And as the night deepened, I allowed myself one last smile. They thought they had destroyed me, but all they had done was prove my grandfather right. The fire hadn't ended me. It had revealed me.